Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SportsTech Allstars podcast. We're kicking off our series speaking to a lineup of VCs focused on sports and innovation. And we're starting with somebody I've known for a while. Thomas Rudy is the Chief Investment Officer at Lead VC. Lead, who've been around the sports tech ecosystem for a long time, originally based out of Berlin, now operating out of Lake Nona in Florida. They have various ways in which they work with startups from pre-seed right up until Series A and beyond, including a little special format which will be revealed in this episode. So stay tuned for that. Lead are an important operator in this fast-growing, fast-changing world of sports innovation. All of that which will also be spoken about in our upcoming SportsTech VC report out on the 6th of November. Stay tuned for all of that and more. Hope you enjoy this episode. Well, Thomas, thank you for taking the time to join us on the show. Kicking off our series focused on investments. We're always talking to VCs at this time of the year, leading up to our latest SportsTech VC report. I want to introduce you as the Chief Investment Officer at Lead VC, but there is a story behind that simple introduction. I know the name Lead is familiar to everybody in the world of sports tech and has been for a while, but it's maybe had a few facelifts or change in avatar. Why don't you brief us from there? First, I want to know a little bit about you, and then, of course, the journey that the Lead brand has undergone.
Absolutely, Rohn, and it's nice to be here on the podcast with you and our friends at SportsTech X. I'm happy to get right into it. So I'm Thomas Rudy, as you said. I'm today the Chief Investment Officer at Lead VC. I started my career in the United States in New York at the time in 2006 when I joined Citigroup in investment banking division and worked in the sports M&A and advisory business. So what we did at the time was helping wealthy individuals buy and sell professional sports teams all around the world. I was instrumental in getting the European football strategy off the ground at the time, where you can get promoted and relegated versus US leagues and all these different factors that play into evaluation more so than it is the traditional leagues here. We also did the league-wide financings for the NBA and the NHL. So learned a lot, the basics of how the world of sports works, what sports business is all about, and how wealthy people leverage their sports assets to make some money successfully. Over a few stops, became a VC myself, started investing my own money into startups here and there. Had some early successes which allowed me to become a little bit more independent. And in 2017, I launched a sports M&A boutique called White Rock out of Munich and New York with a business partner of mine. White Rock became an advisor to very large clients since 2017. We advise sovereign wealth funds on their overall sports strategies. White Rock also works with ministries of sports on mega events like World Cups and Olympic Games. And White Rock also works with management consulting companies like BCG or Oliver Wyman on bringing in expertise for their own sports projects as subject matter experts that help validate some of the strategies that we put forward. And interesting enough, back in 2017, when we were out in market to tell the world about what White Rock is all about, one of my first meetings was with Horst Bente, the grandson of Adi Dassler and the co-founder of Lead. And I learned very quickly, very early on, what Lead's vision was and was so intrigued to become a mentor. So Lead stands for Legacy of Adi Dassler. It was founded by the grandchildren of Adi Dassler back in 2017. They asked themselves, what would Adi Dassler do if he was alive today? And well, the answer they came up with is he would help entrepreneurs in the world of sports start successful businesses and then help them become global brands the way Adidas did that quite successfully, of course. And with that, it launched as an accelerator program out of Berlin. Rohn, you were there. You are well familiar with the early days of Lead, bringing these companies together in an accelerator with just a few other investors that were friends and family. Pretty wild idea in 2017 with fairly limited deal flow and a budding industry that was just taking off, but a bet on the future, certainly. But today, we're a wholly different company. We're no longer just an accelerator program. In fact, we are a holistic venture corporation, as we call Lead, and this is what we did with our rebrand to Lead.vc, as you will find on our new website. We acquired White Rock. So I came on board 2 years ago after the acquisition of White Rock and the advisory business and took over as the Chief Investment Officer. and we built out what we call a family of funds. So now we no longer just run accelerator programs with the Lake Nona Fund. We make seed investments with our partners at the Advantage Fund. We make Series A investments. So we run the gamut from being almost stage agnostic from pre-seed all the way to growth, investing in sports and also in health technology as it relates to sports. So we're talking about not deep medical, we're not talking about pharma, we're talking about injury prevention, recovery, we're talking about human performance, nutrition, we're talking about orthopedics and other related fields that make sense, that talk about what we call the medical consumer, an athlete slash consumer that wants to merge their sports world with their health world.
Human-centeredness. I think I've seen that on your website a few times, and that is absolutely the approach to take within the sports tech investment space. You are absolutely right. I was there, right. I won't say right in the beginning, because I think the first time I ever got introduced to the Lead family was in 2017. I met Natalie Sonner, who's your head of program, and now I believe head of strategy. I think her role has evolved, of course.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong. But I met her on a rooftop in Berlin, and she was telling me about this accelerator focused on sports startups. And I was like, that sounds super interesting, and we need to know more. And that was before the first batch, and the second and third batch I was involved. So yeah, very familiar with the Lead family. As you mentioned, it started in Berlin as the accelerator program, moved to Lake Nona. And now I believe you've got 4 funds. You alluded to a few of the names. Maybe you can quickly walk me through what each of those are. I believe there's Lead 1, there's Lead Lake Nona, the Advantage Fund, and something you call the Locker Room, which I'm especially intrigued by. So let me just walk me through that little funnel, it almost looks like, that you've created for yourself.
That's exactly right, Rohn. And you're going to get some insights here that we haven't really told anybody yet. So you're here to hear it first at SportsTech X. But you're right, Natalie was one of our employee, actually number 1 at Lead. She is still there. So she is one of the originals, and is currently overseeing what we call our Innovate division, which is effectively our services, to which White Rock is also one of the businesses. But let's start with the beginning with Lead 1. Lead 1 is actually our evolution of what we used to call the accelerator program. So those are our pre-seed investments. And what we've learned over the years running the accelerator program was really effectively 2 things. Number 1, we were able to bring together a great brand that we were known for running an accelerator in the sports tech and now in the health tech space as well, and brought great companies together from all over the world. However, we ran 1 to 2 cohorts a year, so we had a selection period for a time, and then we would select the companies, and then would come and spend anywhere between 5 and 6 months with us here in Lake Nona, where I am located now, where Lead has its headquarters now. And then we would do it all over again with the next cohort, bringing the next great companies together, typically 5 to 7 companies. And we realized that, innovation doesn't stop. It doesn't make sense to set random dates in the calendar to say, like, this is when we're looking for innovation. So one of the pain points we try to solve is how do we get the best companies on a year-round basis? How do we look for innovation all the time? How do we make this part of our DNA? And so we decided to basically no longer run in cohorts and module-based pre-seed accelerators, but instead we decided to work out of a pre-seed that we call pre-seed fund. It's a vehicle that we invest from our balance sheet on. So it's very easy to get those approved through just an investment committee meeting. We write the checks immediately and can write those around the year round. So we will make 10 to 12 investments every year, and we can do it whenever we want, whenever the right opportunity arises. The second thing was that we obviously leverage Lake Nona, that is a great smart city with a sports city and a medical city, 6 hospitals, USTA headquarters. We got the Lake Nona Country Club, we got the Lake Nona Performance Center, it's probably the most modern gym in the United States. So a lot of infrastructure to leverage. We brought these companies here for 6 months to spend time here. We gave them housing and an office space that they could work out for free to really leverage this ecosystem, really immerse themselves into it. Well, what we found was that it limited a few of the founders that we thought might have been a good fit for Lead. And that is, if you live in Europe, but you have been maybe a serial founder, you have a family, 2 kids that are in school, it's very hard to move for 6 months to another country and to kind of uproot your life. Or if you're somebody that operates a team on the ground and you can't move the whole team and you need to supervise them in person. So we basically said like Lake Nona and our infrastructure will still be very much part of the pre-seed program that we run. But we're going to make it more in bite sizes where founders come and spend time with us in 1 to 2 week chunks at a time rather than 6 weeks in a row. We'll still take care of them. We'll make sure that they get the most benefit out of it. But the program was effectively evolving. That is lead one. I'll take you right to our seed fund. I'll stay with our stages. So with our seed fund, we have the Lake Nona Fund. It was originated here in Lake Nona. The idea was to support the companies out of our pre-seed program and our accelerator program, first and foremost, to make sure they have follow-on capital and larger checks. While we write checks between 100K to 150K in lead one, those get higher dramatically from $500,000 to $1 million in the seed stage. There we can either lead the investments or we can be follow-ons. We currently have 14 investments in it, split 50-50 between follow-on and lead investments where we take a board seat and have the preferred director roles typically. So in the Lake Nona Fund, we invest in sports and health tech together, just like in the pre-seed. So what we do there is we bring companies all over the world together. We give them an angle to leverage what is happening in Lake Nona, but also our network of 200 mentors, of which you are one, Rohn, obviously, and have helped some of our companies with your expertise. And we bring together, obviously, our network, particularly as it relates to sports teams and health companies from all over the world. So this fund has launched in 2021. We're currently in year 3, so 7 years of lifetime left. We have a few winners that I believe are going to do quite well. And so in the next few years, Rohn, I hope we can talk about some of those exits that are coming and some of those companies that are making a name for themselves. And we have the Advantage Fund, which is our original fund launched in 2018 and led by Alex Bente and Jeremy Pressman. It was a joint venture with us and Our Crowd. Our Crowd obviously being Israel's largest VC. We launched the fund as a $50 million fund in 2018. And have been making a number of investments, particularly purely in sports. So the way we think about it is we're sports and health tech investors in pre-seed and seed and invest out of the same vehicles into it. Once we go in our world, Series A is a little bit later stage, we have to specialize. So as we're focusing on a Series A fund, we went the sports tech route first, and those are only sports and sports tech related companies. And then we have Locker Room, and Locker Room is kind of our invite only very speakeasy fund that we really haven't advertised that much yet. More of it will be coming out in the next few months and years. But this fund is already live and running basically in stealth mode. So currently, Locker Room is only a fund that only has athletes as investors in it. We are completely stage and sector agnostic, so we can invest in whatever we want. That is typically outside sports and health, but we can do that as well. So it could be a data center, it could be a tequila company, we could be investing in an apparel company out of Locker Room. As long as two things are true. Number one is because we only have athletes in it and they are some of the greatest athletes in the world, we will be revealing some of them over time. We have to get a better deal in some of the investments that we make, whether that is advisory shares or warrants or options, or we get into an oversubscribed round or a combination thereof. That has to be true. And the second part that needs to be true is that it is less of a venture track, 7 to 10 years. We're looking at a holding period of 5 years or less to get into those investments, either monetize them, getting out through secondaries, or hopefully leading those companies to an exit. So Locker Room is a special one because through our great network that you're well familiar with, and through our athletes, we've seen a number of fantastic deals that fall a little bit outside of our VC mandate in sports and health tech. And we have seen that, you know, as a return-driven organization, we wanted to capture some of that, and Locker Room allows us that. So we're making some pretty cool investments with some great athletes. And again, little by little, we're going to open the doors into the Locker Room so you guys can step in and see what's happening.
Thomas, appreciate that detailed yet precise explanation of what exactly is happening. I could not have, well, I guess this is part of your job, so it's good that you do it well. So thank you for that. I wouldn't have mentioned Locker Room, but I had heard about it. Let's say a little birdie told me that this is something that you guys had planned, but it's up on your website now, so I guess we can talk about it. So super cool to see what that'll bring. And also the structure. Let's say the Advantage Fund is the one probably that's, I think, been around the longest, as you said as well. And Lead One is the latest version of the accelerator model. Could not agree more. I think that old accelerator model, which is cohort driven, is perhaps broken by definition for all the reasons that you illustrated. So now having something which is a bit more continuous, but also allowing you to enter at a pre-seed stage makes a lot of sense. I want to stay on Lead One because I've also seen a bunch of announcements on your socials about venture partners that you've brought on to Lead One, but these are not your typical venture partners. You've got the MLBPA, you've got the Orlando Magic, FC Cincinnati, and other individuals as well. Where did that come from? Walk me through the evolution of bringing on a players association, league players association, an actual sports team, but in the role of a venture partner. So they assist you with deals and allow you maybe as a playground to experiment or run pilots and stuff. What exactly does that look like?
Yeah, Rohn, I'm glad you're touching on that. This is actually something we're particularly proud of, announcing all these venture partners that some of them in the background we've worked on for a number of years, but finally we're able to tell our story with the rebrand that we launched this summer. So the way we're thinking about venture partners at Lead One is because we now have a dynamic, fluid, evolving program where companies come and go, where companies come in and out of Lake Nona, but we invest year round. We wanted to make sure that in addition to what we can bring to the table, we want to give those companies an even bigger unfair advantage, as we call it. And so we've been working and building great relationships with some of the best sporting organizations, leagues, teams, but also in the health sector for a number of years, where we've been sharing deal flow, where we've been exchanging expertise, where some of the people in those organizations have been mentors in our lead programs, particularly in the accelerator. But we felt that it would be a great exercise in both branding and value add to bring those organizations under the hood, under the lead umbrella as venture partners, and allow those organizations to work directly with some of our startups. And so what we have done with Lead One is we always, as Lead, will put our money where our mouth is, right? We will select the company, we will invest in them, and we will write a check. So once that is done, we either work with the venture partners either before that investment to kind of get some validation and some expertise to have insights into the company from another partner. Once that is done, we're taking a look at the particular company. Say it is a baseball-related company. We would contact the MLBPA and say like, hey, here's this company. You might have looked at it before. We think this could be a great fit for a venture partner role. As a venture partner, then the MLBPA, there would be double opt-in. The MLBPA would say like, yes, we really like the company. The startup would also say, yes, we really love to work with the MLBPA, because in baseball, who doesn't, right? You have access to the greatest baseball players and an amazing infrastructure. But that aside, once the double opt-in has happened, the venture partner will support the company with something that very early stage is quite valuable for companies, which is either a pilot case, a use case, a customer case, or even some kind of advisory role, mentor role that comes with it, where they can proudly announce that they're also working with that venture partner, which obviously drives a lot of value. And for the venture partner, it helps them to position themselves as highly innovative. We see that particularly with the MLBPA, we see it with the Orlando Magic, who are the most innovative NBA team out there, are always taking risks, always trying new things. You see this in the arena. You also see that with the players, the way they train and perform. And then with FC Cincinnati in MLS, that has really done a lot of things differently, and most of that has been driven by technology. So this venture partner is basically a person on steroids. You get organizations behind yourself, and we're working very closely with it. We are looking at the venture partners not just in the Lead One context. We're building close relationships. We're spending a lot of time with those venture partners, so the number of venture partners will be limited. We have currently announced some over the next few months. A few will join us, particularly also from the health side, as we're building that out. But between companies like Sportradar and Exos and others that have joined us on this front, we couldn't be more proud, and we've seen some great use cases, and more particular announcements will happen as we make more investments.
Brilliant. And what I found most intriguing about it is that you use the terminology of a venture partner, which is, let's say in VC parlance, is typically a deal flow or deal sourcing partner. But you've just actually use the words. It's a partner to the venture arm, and as a partner, they can provide benefits in a number of ways. Obviously, the benefits of the startups are very apparent, and the synergies between you and the venture partner as well. So very cool initiative. I thought it was a genuinely innovative angle to
Thank you.
present and kind of publicly announce that, hey, we're partnering with a bunch of these important leaders in the world of sports tech, and then present that as a value prop to the industry. Fantastic. Thomas, I think we've spent a good half, let's say a little more than half the pod talking about the structure and stuff, but it's good that we did. I think it's good to get that message out clearly. So now I want to switch tracks to what's happening in the market in general. Maybe you can also talk about, well, let's do this in two parts. You've got a lot of investment vehicles. I'll give you a chance to maybe talk about one or two successes that you are especially proud to talk about. I'm sure you're proud of all your kids, of all the ventures that you've invested in, but there's always a couple that maybe shine a bit brighter. And then lead that into what are the trends that you're looking at currently in sports technology or just the sports innovation landscape that you're most excited about.
Yeah, no, happy to do that. And like you said, we've made just over 70 investments since 2017. So our portfolio has grown quite tremendously. Currently, we're kind of split 50-50 between sports and health tech, even though a lot of health investments fall under the sports and human performance area for sure. So companies I'd like to highlight is, and we could go on for hours, Rohn, that might be a whole series in itself of podcasts, but maybe for another day. Two companies I would like to highlight is one of the companies that was in our first cohort in Lake Nona back in 2021. It's a company called OxyWear. OxyWear, founded by Shavini Fernando out of Washington, D.C. It is a company that initially, so it is a device you clip onto your ear where the blood capillaries and the skin is the thinnest, so you get the best reading of your blood oxygen levels out of it. And initially, OxyWear was a company that was measuring blood oxygen levels for the purpose of high altitude and high performance training. So if you're on high altitude, you're typically deprived of a little oxygen. What does this do to your body? You need to measure it. So it came from a sports and a human performance angle. But all along, the strategy was for OxyWear to enter a much larger market than just the high altitude training, but in effect, the health market. So OxyWear's sensor was always destined to become an FDA-cleared device, one that can then be used as a medical device effectively, that measures your blood oxygen levels to monitor certain health conditions. There's many where blood oxygen plays a role and gives you valuable insights on how to better handle that and what you need to do in order to get healthy. And so OxyWear 2 years ago embarked on that strategy to redevelop the device more robustly towards a medical device. And then about a year and a half ago, started the long process of becoming an FDA-cleared, FDA-approved device. We've been following the company since the beginning. We were pre-seed investors. We're now investors in the Lake Nona fund through a seed fund as well. So we've followed the company every step of the way. Very amazing founder that just doesn't give up. Very resilient. Going sometimes from month to month with just the right capital to make payroll, and getting to a point finally where the company is adequately funded. Ups and downs through the FDA clearance. There were multiple times where the FDA came back and said, like, hey, you need to revise this, you need to approach it. And every time it would take longer, and every time it would get more expensive. But long story short, in August, OxyWear actually did it. They received the FDA clearance, and they are now a medical device that already has an assigned insurance code attached to it as well. So it enters a much larger market. The company, obviously, as a result, has become much more valuable. There will be Series A that the company is raising next year. There will be a lot more strategics that will be joining this from the health side. But we're proud to be early supporters of Shavini, and we'll continue to follow on as the company hits its milestones. And that's really one of the perfect examples of one of the trends we're talking about that I'll talk about a little bit later. The other company that I'd love to highlight is a company called Mustard. Mustard is in the youth training field. Mustard effectively initially worked in baseball and helped young kids to how to throw a baseball. It was developed via the technology and knowledge of Tom House, who is the most famous baseball pitching coach in the world. He's a biomechanics expert, and that took off really well. And the IP that Mustard has been able to create, and some of the investors that informed it, like Justin Rose, for example, a PGA Tour golfer, basically said, like, this is technology we can use in the world of golf as well. So we effectively were able to bring together some more expertise around Justin Rose and a few others to develop a golf app, and that golf app launched earlier this year together in a partnership with Golf Digest. So in a way, Golf Digest is a venture partner / commercial partner of Mustard, not of us, but has been able to obviously access millions of subscribers that get directly access to Mustard and the app. So here's a company that took technology in the biomechanics space, started where they were best at in baseball, but then expanded to a multi-sport level, which is we usually like. We like investing in sports tech companies that can go multi-sport, that have IP that can be expandable, so that you address a much larger market. And Mustard has done quite well with that. So if you're out there playing baseball, throwing pitches, or on the golf course trying to hit a golf ball and do it a little bit better, you can learn from the best coaches in the world. Just download the app and check it out. I recommend it. It's a great experience. Certainly has made my golf game a lot better.
That's a nice little plug, Thomas, and like well rehearsed, beautifully positioned. Now you were talking about a segue right into the trends, and
Yes.
So what are the ones that excite you the most?
So we see a couple of trends. We see a lot of trends, and we see a few broken trends as well. So let me talk about the positives and the negatives as well. On the positive trend, what we see is the world of sports and health continuing to merge, right? So the way we think about it is, in a way, all of us are wearing some kind of sensor, have much better insights about our health today than we used to have, right? Our bet is that companies like Adidas or companies like even Apple will see themselves in 3 to 5 years as health companies as much as they are tech or apparel companies, because health plays such a big role. So we call this the development of a medical consumer, a consumer that is more wellness focused than deep, FDA approved, regulated health market. It is people that want to live a healthy lifestyle and just live and perform like a pro athlete, right? And pro athletes can be the ones that are in sports. Pro athletes could be also the ones that are effective in the military, right? They are high performers. They're doing a lot. They are putting their bodies through extreme challenges, both physically and mentally, and those are trends that we're seeing. The analogy I always give is the following. So when I go and sit in my car, Rohn, and follow me with this, and I turn it on, the moment I do that, I know how fast I'm going. I know the inside-outside temperature. I even know my tire pressure and what's playing on the radio. An average car is about 600 sensors. So I argue that today, if you sit in your car and you drive, you know more about your car than you know about yourself. And the bet is that in the next 10 years, what we're investing on the sports tech and the health tech side is that that's going to change. We're not just going to wear an Apple Watch or a Whoop like I am wearing. We are going to have more sensors, but more AI, more technologies, not just sensors, that will help us understand ourselves better, live a better lifestyle, live longer as a result, longevity being a big focus of us going forward and driving this type of trend. So the medical consumer, the high performer, the athlete in all of ourselves is something that we see as a huge growth market, where we look at adjacent markets, which is obviously sports and health, they're adjacent, and together they're much larger markets for VCs like us to invest and find the next unicorn. In terms of broken models, we actually think that the world of VR is currently done. I think virtual reality is something that we have seen a long time. There have been some companies that have trying to make a difference. But what we found is that there are great solutions in the virtual reality world, in the software world for VR, but it really is a hardware problem. It is not intuitive for us humans to put these gigantic, clunky headsets on us and then live our life and spend significant time in it. Where we see great successes in mixed and augmented reality, the Sphere in Las Vegas obviously being one of the most prominent and most talked about examples. By the way, launched and owned by Madison Square Garden, a sports-focused organization, obviously, with the New York Knicks and the New York Rangers behind them, now going in the entertainment space. And the other company that we've been following for a long time on the startup side, Cosm, that is doing the augmented reality and mixed reality bars where you can effectively immerse yourself into the games that you're watching from the middle of a sports bar. So what we're seeing here effectively is where we have maybe thought that technology would go too far into the virtual reality world, but human limitation and human needs leave us still in the real world, where augmented reality, I think, is going to be the winner going forward, at least in the next 5 years. And virtual reality will have to take a backseat, no matter how much futurists talk about it going forward. We see other trends, obviously, as well. So we see great growing trends continued in the youth sports space, very mature market in the United States. There's a lot of roll-up strategies we see on the private equity side, which presents exit strategies for us early investors that have invested in the youth sports space, whether that is roll-up for events or even training applications. We'll have to see what that looks like. But in the global market, youth sports is starting to play a much bigger role. So as you look into Europe, as you look into Asia, more young kids are picking up sports, leveraging sports for their benefit. Schools are prioritizing sports as a health initiative as well, and that leads to a global growth of the sports market. And then lastly, something you will hear more and more, especially on the private equity side, but we have seen this actually quite a bit on the venture side as well, is women's sports. We believe that there's a big trend on women's sports as it relates to soccer, surely. Soccer in the United States, team values in the NWSL have increased greatly. That type of valuation and that type of capital going into those companies will then trickle down to allow those teams that are not in these rigid, established, hundreds of years organizations that will be more open to innovation, which will free up more capital into companies that we invest in and more openness to use cases to drive that, and see how women in women's sports leverage those technologies for their benefit. I particularly like women's soccer in Europe as an opportunity, as the US market is quite saturated. And then obviously we see developments already in strong markets like tennis, like golf, but obviously others that are emerging that we're trying to see, obviously, around some idols that fans idolize, like Caitlin Clark in basketball and other growth sectors. But alongside that, we see the globalization of women's sports as well, but the start is in the US, and it'll be a while until other sectors and continents try to take that over as well.
So much to unpack in that answer, Thomas, and I think all four of the areas that you touched, I could not agree more on. I'll just try to do a quick recap. Number one, the connected individual, or we also talk about it as the connected athlete. I'll use Fit Insider's terminology. Anthony and Joe do an incredible job with their content and just about measuring everything about you. And this will be a big part of the future, especially going into the insurance, let's say medical device, where your insurance will cover this for you. Makes so much sense, right? I think that'll be a big part of the future. I completely agree that Apple, Amazon, all of these players will become a big part of that, how it achieves consumer at scale. Number two, I could not agree more on the VR side as well. Who's going to sit around with these glasses for so long? I mean, no matter how much you spend, $3,500 is the latest version of the Apple Vision Pro. Nobody's going to spend that. And not that they plan, it'll become, not that they plan to continue, it'll become cheaper, but still, I think the augmented reality COSM you mentioned, 250 million they raised this year, I think only a couple of months ago, just to increase more venues and stuff. So that's a big trend that we're seeing on point. The youth sports is a big one. I want to talk to you about that as well. We could go on, especially in India, which is a segment that I talk about, a market that I talk about very passionately, because that's where I'm from originally. And let's say setting up an NCAA-esque version in different parts of the world is a big opportunity. And lastly, women's sports. I was just on a panel a couple of days ago in Barcelona with Luis Vicente, who's one of the founders of Mercury 13, one of the first women's focused funds. We've had Jasmine Robertson on this podcast from Monarch Collective, funds that are focused only on women's sports, a trend that is not going anywhere. So great to see that you are on point with all of them. Thomas, we have absolutely motored through this episode, so I have to bring it home quickly, even though clearly we could go on and on. Maybe you can tell our audience, what should we expect from Lead VC in the next month, weeks, let's say coming period?
Yes, absolutely. You will see a continued very quick growth at Lead. So we are active investors. We're out in the marketplace, and this is the signal for all the startups, early stage companies out there. Our doors are open. We're not holding back. We like the current market environment, and we see a lot of fantastic founders out there. So while we have 70 companies right now, roughly in our portfolio, expect to add about 20 to 25 companies by the next time we speak next year, hopefully, Rohn. That's the first one, so we'll be active. You will be seeing a lot more venture partners to be announced. You will be seeing some growth on the lead team as well as we continue to grow. You will see us being effectively bicontinental still between our European headquarters and our in Berlin and our world headquarters in Lake Nona. You will also see a focus a little bit towards the rest of the world, and India will play a big role in this, Rohn. So not to disclose so much, there will be much happening. We will disclose some of our athletes that we work with. And by the way, I'll finish this with a little bit of game for all the viewers and listeners here on this podcast. There is actually a world-class golfer out there that has the locker room logo on his golf bag. And I'm not going to disclose who that is, but it's out in the public. It has been at several tournaments, and you will be able to find that. And by the way, if you watch the last season of the PGA Tour, you saw that Justin Rose was carrying a Mustard golf bag, both at the Masters and at the Open in the UK, where he obviously did quite well. That's one we can talk about it, the locker room logo, and the player you'll have to find yourself, and we'll disclose that later.
Well, Thomas, I think it's inevitable that someday, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, somebody will find this logo at some point in time, but we shall see at what point in time that is. Thank you so much, Thomas, for taking the time to join us today on this pod. Before I let you go, my favorite question to ask, and I cannot let you go before asking it, I want to know always from our guests, what has been your favorite sporting moment?
Oh, my favorite sporting moment is, I have to say, it was the Super Bowl 2 years ago, and a year and a half ago, when the Kansas City Chiefs beat the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, you go to a Super Bowl and it's such a hyped event, and everybody's talking about it, the world is watching, and then you're always hoping, you know, is this going to be a great game? And to be immersed in this event with all the festivals around it and the great entertainment, it turned out to be an amazing game. It was my first Super Bowl. It certainly won't be my last. As a golfer, I would have said it was the Masters that I went to earlier this year. But no, the Super Bowl, and in particular this game, the Eagles against the Chiefs, was my top moment so far.
Fantastic. And to experience it live is such a thing. I mean, your first Super Bowl, I haven't been to one yet. We have to correct that. I mean, I'm not stateside, so often you live there, of course, you have the option to. But yeah, something that I would love to correct fairly soon, to go catch a Super Bowl. Thomas, once again, thank you so much for taking the time. Love to hear everything that Lead VC is up to, and we'll continue to feature all the news in our content, shall we say. Keep us posted.
It has been an absolute pleasure, Rohn, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. All the best to the SportsTech X family, and see you soon.
Will do. And that's a wrap for another episode of the SportsTech X podcast, leading up to the VC report, which I told you will be out on November 6th. So depending on when you're hearing this episode, it's either coming up or already out. So go get your copy. A lot of the trends that Thomas talked about in this episode around women's sports, around youth sports, around this mixed augmented reality area, a lot of that is covered in this report backed by data. These are the trends that we're driving investment in sports tech. So watch out for that report. All right, guys, see you next week then. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the SportsTech Allstars podcast with Rohn Malhotra. If you like our show, let us know and leave a review. And if you want to know more about us, check out sportstechx.com, where you can find our latest industry reports and updates. For a deeper dive into all things sports tech, check out our comprehensive database, SportsTech DB, at sportstechdb.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media. You can find us at SportsTechX on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Join us next time for another insightful conversation with a leader in sports tech.